Hi, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Standards and General Purposes Committee. As you will have noticed, we have a lengthy agenda this evening, so I'm asking you all to play nicely. The other thing to let you know before we start the meeting is that I'm intending to take item 17 after item 9. The reason for that, and I'm doing this with the agreement of this committee, so if you're not happy then I will listen to the alternatives. But the reason being that I think that's an important item. We often leave it till the last item for obvious reasons. Sometimes, particularly when there's so many items on the agenda, it means that there's very little time for scrutiny of a very important issue. So is that agreed, or do people object?
I wasn't going to say that I object to it because it's possible we might need to. Because it's possible we might need to exclude the press and public. It'll be clear to people that they'd be welcome to come back in after that item's been taken.
They would always be welcome, and we will go and get them as soon as the item is concluded. I think that's a very good suggestion. So, okay, is that agreed? Thank you. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillors Cowper, Bakari and Adam Bush, and we've got as substitutes this evening Councillors Anderson, Gould and Omar Bush.
Welcome to you all. I've had a message from Councillor Ben Butler, who is stuck on a train somewhere in the Midlands, indicating that he was making every effort to get here as soon as he could, but he expected to be late. So, item 2 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any? Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. Are they agreed? Item 4 is the external audit annual letter. Suresh, would you like to introduce this briefly?
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief. So the annual audit letter, it summarises the work that we've completed in your most recent audit, which for you was the 2018-19 accounts. The executive summary probably tells you all you need to know. I think when we came to you at the end of July, we were working very hard to get the audit done by the end of July, both officers and the auditors. I was pleased to be able to do that, so we signed your opinion on the 31st of July, and you then published those accounts accordingly. You're probably aware, Chair, that I think over 200 authorities across the country weren't in that position for various reasons, so it was quite pleasing for me to be able to do that for this council and for this audit. The only other thing I just wanted to highlight, Chair, was on page 23, which is the audit fees. In the plan that we issued right at the start of the year and in the report that we issued in July, we kind of indicated a range of additional fees in respect of additional work that we've done. We have now agreed those fees with Caroline, and those are subject to approval from PSAA. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Looks like you're getting away like that. I would be inclined to quit while you're ahead. So can we note this?
Yeah, one question.
Of course, John.
Do you have to report to the National Audit Office every time you complete the account, or if you find something that is global?
So the work that we do on behalf of the National Audit Office is to review your whole of government accounts return. Yeah. So you, and to ensure that's consistent with the accounts that we've just audited. We have to do that each year.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman, I was just going to say, we're sometimes really mealy-mouthed, aren't we? We're always happy to pick over the little odd points. Sometimes they're important, sometimes they're less important. But this is a colossal piece of work, as the auditor said, and they've done a good job, but more particularly so have our officers. We don't often as a committee say well done to our officers, and I think on this occasion we should.
I assume the committee is happy to endorse those remarks. Right, could you pass them on to your team, please?
Certainly, I'll take that back to the team who did most of the work. So definitely, yes, thank you.
And I think we've already noted that, there were difficulties, it wasn't without its problems, and we snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat, for which I would like to express my thanks to both our own staff and the auditors, so thank you. Right, item 5 is the internal audit progress report. That's Margaret.
Thank you, Chair. This is a progress on the internal audit plan that was agreed in the committee in March. It's just an update on the audit work that we've done so far. So we made good progress on the plan. So at this point it would be too early to say, give a view on the overall areas of risk of concern. We've got 8 procurement audits on the plan, but there's only actually there's quite a few in progress. There's only one that we previously reported up. The progress on the action on that report on the contract monitoring commission services is we're following up on to make sure that they're getting the contract signed and they have a contract register in place, so they'll be sending us evidence of that, so that's good. I've just given details of each of the areas of review and the assurances that we've provided on those. The 4 limited assurances at the moment are still, the 3 limited are still at draft, so I'll actually report those back at the next committee once I finalise them. On page 30 is just the progress on the outstanding audit actions. So we still have 7 from last year that we're following up on, and they're on the declaration of interest and the corporate procurement actions. We're just making sure that they're being implemented, and we will report back progress on those at the next meeting. If anyone's got any questions.
Thank you, Margaret. Are there any questions? John, you should ask your obligatory question now.
On page 30, the first paragraph, 313, you say here the number of schools audited each year has reduced and is undertaken on a risk-based approach. Can you give a bit of explanation? Reduced?
Yeah, so we have quite a limited resource in the team. We've got 4 auditors in the team that cover all audits within the borough, so I've actually have to take more of a risk-based approach to all the audit areas that we look at. So with schools, they do get support from finance. There's 2 officers in finance that go out and provide support to schools. We work with them to find out if there's any areas of concern, and they could be where the school's got maybe a deficit budget, they're not sending in their returns, or there's a change in personnel, finance officer, or the head changes that may trigger an audit. We do try and pick up some of the older ones as well, so it's a bit of a mix. So we'll make sure we pick up ones that have got concerns, and also we'll look at other ones that we haven't looked at for a while.
Okay, I thought you did all schools in either, but I understand what you mean.
Was there ever a time that every school was audited?
Well, years ago we used to do every 3 years. We used to go out and do it as a rolling thing. But we've had to. So now if we go out, it could be 6-7 years before we get out to a school, unless it's concern is raised.
What you're suggesting by way of reassurance to the committee is that we have officers whose role is primarily support, but they are effectively some eyes and ears on the ground, and if there is a matter of concern, it will be drawn to your attention, and you would then take the risk-based approach to.
Yeah, I think Merton's in a good position that they have, as you say, 2 officers that go out and they have regular contact with schools, some schools buy into an SLA. So yeah, I'm getting sure it's from that, and then they will pick up any issues.
Any other questions? Oh, Mark.
Thank you. On 3.11 financial systems, how do you decide which order to prioritise the audits? So is this taken as most important least, or?
It's no, it's just when we can schedule get the audit agreed with the department. But maybe in order to get a good sample, we do try and do them in Q3, but because we've got quite a few to do, so we may have started a few early.
Okay.
But it's just when we've managed to get agreement to get the start date going on those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we're asked to note the report and comment. We've noted and commented. Thank you, Margaret. So, item 6 is the fraud report, and that is also... No, it's not. It's Kevin. No, it's Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. This again is the progress update on work undertaken on fraud referrals this year. I'm just going to draw your attention to a couple of items in the report. First, I draw your attention to the table 1 on page 36. Just that last item in terms of the Merton's call upon the contingent resource that's put into the fraud partnership. There have been a number of corporate employee-related cases referred through to us to investigate. These type of cases typically take the greatest amount of resource, and because we've had more of those than, say, we planned for, that's why the full resource that is used is above where it should be. My job is I have a meeting in front of the Shared Service Board, the directors and their representatives. Fraud itself has no exact science or timescale. It is what it is. My job is to make sure that all partners get a fair share, or their fair share out of the partnership, the funds they put in. So at the moment, Merton's receiving more. Because of that, I'm now having to look at perhaps some of the other proactive work we do and perhaps scale back on that, or possibly considering our referral acceptance threshold and raising that a little if other resources are coming through. So that's one item. And the other item I'd like to draw members' attention to is actually on page 38, and it's item 4.1. This was brought to members previously about a London counter-fraud hub. My update news is not really an update, it's that the initiative has stalled. There is a potential challenge to the procurement of this fraud hub. During the test phase, there was a change in how authorities were going to pay for use of the hub. That change is potentially being deemed could be ruled the procurement exercise unlawful. So we are in the hands of the lead authority who's taking further advice on this, but we're not hearing anything or any great progress on that. Because of that, I am then having to look at the viability of other data matching initiatives. And we're starting to do that across the fraud partnership. I've started looking at that in terms of the National Fraud Initiative. They offer a number of additional pilots, so I'm looking at the viability of those to try and fill some of that gap, because we were expecting to, or potentially expecting to partake in the London County Fraud Hub. Apart from that, I'll just take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Well, may I put it as more of a comment? Those who've been on this committee for a while and officers will know that I have a bee in my bonnet about the misuse of blue badges. And so I'm pleased to have seen the email the other day that suggests there's going to be a considerable focus on that for enforcement. And I just highlighted again by looking at table 3 on page 38, where the notional sum, where £500 per blue badge savings are listed. So, you know, we've gone from 1 to 2 to 5. But there are many blue badges being used in Merton, and I think it's important that they are properly used and then valued. And so I do hope that Mr. Holland, who I know has heard me speak on this before, will take a note.
If I could answer in sort of 2 parts. First, yes, there is the increasing work from Merton's own enforcement teams on this, and the lead investigators I have on blue badge work has actually met and spoken with them. So we're discussing and sharing the approaches, what can be done, how we can support them on that side. And then the bit about the notional value and the cost and somewhat distress that misuse of blue badge can cause. There's always review work. I'm a member of the London Borough Fraud Investigators Group, and we are trying to look at all of these notional values to see whether what's used is appropriate given the consequence of the type of fraud. So we're reviewing that cost as well.
Thank you, Chair. Is there a system where you check sort of periodically, every 3 or 4 years, if the blue badge is still needed?
I think that would be for the issuing authority. So from a fraud perspective, we don't. What we do have from a fraud perspective is a national match. The matches against deceased persons, and that information is fed back to each authorities, and those badges will be cancelled. That review process and the reissue is down to how the badges are issued, and not by it's not managed by the full team.
Brenda.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure where this is, but I know of a few people who are mentally not capable and still driving and have their blue badges and have had some serious accidents. And I don't know how we, or if we work with the GP, because I can't go and ask about their medical condition, and I don't know how you intervene in that. But they are really dangerous, and I am quite worried about it.
I think, unfortunately, that's an area. It's not a fraud, an overt fraud that my team, my officers could get into. That's something the police themselves in watching how on the zone and how any driver drives a vehicle and challenge those. But it isn't something I can get into. If we believe that people are doing something that perhaps an act of deception to allow them to continue driving, that's something that either ourselves or the police can look into to investigate.
I think, Brenda, just to respond to that, I have a feeling that it is possible to report such matters to the DVLA, because I can recall some years ago dealing with a case where a mother contacted me about one of our service users at my work because she was desperately concerned about the well-being of her son, but also the impact it could have on other people, and actually that was successful and worked, so that may be an avenue open to you. Because there's a requirement, if somebody has difficulties with respect to their driving, for them to inform the DVLA, as I understand, we can check that one out, but that certainly happened a few years back, unless they've changed the regulations. Thomas.
Where there are sanctions or referrals, is there anything done to sort of publicise the fact that those have happened, to sort of prevent other sort of cases from arising?
We do try to publish ourselves, or we liaise with the your communications teams. We did discuss, there was something, I think it was over a year ago, but on the Blue Badge side to say, collectively we've had success with X number of cases, so we could use that as a piece of publicity to help increase the number of referrals. There is one authority where in the partnership where the work on Blue Badges is more intensively resourced, heavily resourced, and therefore there are more results coming out of that. That's been going on for a number of years, and because of that there is a very good public referrals to us. And I will again take this away and look and see what more can be done in terms of having members of the public being able to get their concerns reported to us. So either between ourselves or your own public enforcement teams can actually address them.
Stan?
When a blue badge is issued, is there car registration attached to that blue badge?
No, it's the badge is for the person, the badge holder, so they can be taken around in any number of vehicles. There is a bit where in households, I believe they can assign up to 2 cars to it. This is for the bit about driving through London to avoid the congestion charge. But as I say, the badge isn't restricted to a vehicle, it's to an individual.
My question is, where there is employee fraud, do we not, I mean, is there a threshold above which we report such fraud to the police? Because, I can see the outcome described in both these cases, and so, somebody, there are disciplinary proceedings underway and somebody resigned. If the sum involved is of such significance, then is there not a responsibility to report this matter to the police as a fraud, a criminal fraud?
Yes, so it isn't just about the sum, it can be about the type of fraud, the deliberate nature of the act, and if there is a potential of fuller sanctions being brought on that individual by the police, yes, we do make referrals to those. We have in the past for them, but the cases then hand over to the police then to address.
So, in the case of number 10 in this list, I would have thought that there's an abuse of trust, and that makes the offence more serious in the eyes of the law.
Yes, that in relation to an isolated incident with one PCM, it would be something the police would take up. I see, I agree with you in terms of the use of trust position, but if it was about my identity, charge notice. We have seen...
That we know about.
But that's all we can report on, we deal with. We investigate, we try, we haven't found any others in that name. When that case would be investigated, we would look around that.
Okay. And what about 11? Same situation, somebody's caught, we commence disciplinary proceedings, they resign, and that's it. Is that enough?
Again, the discussions are always held with HR, and the decision of accepting the resignation isn't the 14th, it will be the Merton advice from HR. That one in terms of fraud and potential losses to the authority, because both jobs were working for the council, you have someone who's happy to that the sickness is so they won't do job A, but they enjoy job B a bit more, so they turn up for that. So it's not necessarily police a case that the police I think would be of interest in.
Duplication of hours being claimed.
Yes. So I think that was the overlap in terms of the start and end of the two positions. I can go back and have another look at that to see how the decision to take no further would happen. I can feed that back to you, but I don't think probably would think that the evidence of overlap that we have might be quite minimal. So the value would be maybe something that doesn't warrant taking that further action because the cost involved in taking that further action. But I'll have to look at that for you and get that reported back.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for presenting that. And we note it. And we have made some comments. David has made a comment that I think is something that would come on for all members of this committee because it really does kind of undermine the whole process and kind of the system of allocating these badges. If people lose, if the public lose confidence in that, then I think that's very damaging and we should be vigilant on that one. Okay, thank you. Item 7 is the annual reports report, and that's Karen.
Okay, so you've all seen the report. 2018-19 we saw a massive dip in performance across the council. So our performance for the previous years been kind of very, very similar, plodding along. But there was some major issues in waste services that impacted on the amount of complaints that we had, and member inquiries, specifically member inquiries doubled in 18-19. We had more complaints escalating to stage 2 and more escalating to the Ombudsman. So I don't know if you want to ask any questions, but if I just caveat, I did a bit of checking before I came, and we are looking to be back on track to how we were a couple of years ago with regards to numbers of complaints and members' inquiries, and performance levels are definitely on the upward trend.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the introduction of the new waste collection system caused huge difficulties.
Yes.
But from the most up-to-date information that you have suggests that that spike has returned to the levels previously experienced.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions? Stan?
Yes, thanks for that. Did you find any reason why that displayed in that period of time?
Where we had such an increase in complaints and contacts, so it wasn't just contact for the complaints team, it was the contact centre, the service areas. People were basically overwhelmed with the volume, and some things perhaps didn't get addressed quickly enough. So if a complaint is due on like today and the person doesn't get it, the next day they could potentially escalate that to the next stage. So there were a lot of people escalating things because for some reason this seemed to be the most emotive subject we had complaints about for the past few years.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Hi, could you tell me the members' inquiries, is that going down now? Was it because there was an influx of quite a lot of new councillors? Or?
Yeah, I think it can be put down to quite a few issues. There were more members going out canvassing, so obviously there was a lot more visibility, so we were getting a lot more members' inquiries coming through that way. But I think just because of the general how people were feeling. It was easier to go to their, perhaps a member, especially if people don't know how to go through the corporate complaints process. It's good for them to have somebody to advocate on their behalf. But member inquiries absolutely doubled, but it has reduced back to what it had been for the previous couple of years, which was fairly consistent.
David? Obviously, the introduction of changed waste collection arrangements was a factor there. It wasn't only, though, in environment and regeneration. I'll make a statement, perhaps you can comment on it.
Okay.
That one of the problems with these statistics is that once new members bed in, they use the back channels to get quick action. So not everything goes through members' inquiries. And I think if I say we're all guilty of that, because I know it doesn't help the monitoring for us to get a good feel for it. And also, perhaps you could just comment on, we know that actually from statistics produced by Environment and Regen, there were thousands of complaints that were made about the waste collection service, but they didn't register necessarily, either because they've been passed through a member, or more particularly, if you're looking at the stage 1 complaints, very few of those complaints reached stage 1. So there are complaints about the council services, but they don't necessarily get to stage 1. And then my other comments about members' inquiries, which I won't repeat. But
Okay, so with the complaints that might not be dealt with as a complaint, we encourage all service areas and the complaints team, the contact centre, anybody who is talking to somebody who has an issue with a service, whatever the service is, to try and resolve it locally first, because that's what we want. We want to resolve their problems and for it not to escalate into a formal process that takes time. So wherever possible we do that. Specifically with waste services, if somebody was ringing up saying, I want to make a complaint because my bin hasn't been picked up once, that was dealt with as a service failure rather than an actual complaint. So the volume of perhaps issues of, say, missed bins wouldn't ever equate to the number of complaints that we took. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And with regards to the members' inquiries, so it was over 4,000 in 1819, which is like double. So I don't think there were too many people going around the back door. But we do try and encourage people to use the member inquiries, like you say, so that we've got all of the data and we know what issues residents are going to their members about, and specifically if there's any issues in specific wards. There are some times that we recognise where members might go to service managers because it is a really quick business as usual, deal with it informally, again, to stop things escalating through a formal process that actually takes up everybody's time. If somebody can be answered quickly in a quick phone call, then that's what we want to do.
I'm sorry, Mary.
Councillor Williams has asked.
Kind of following on from what Councillor Williams has said in regards to members' inquiries, do we know what the numbers are with the follow-up or emails of members chasing the original inquiry that had been sent?
No.
Is that something that we can find out?
We are looking to maybe get a case management system in that might be able to do that, but at the moment the complaints assistant that logs all the member inquiries is just one person. They're logging them all, sending them out to the service areas, and then members are encouraged to then contact the service areas, because we don't want to bring in another process where you're contacting somebody else for them to contact the service area. So we actually don't have that, but if we had a more holistic way of looking at things, maybe we could.
Okay.
Because that's something, you know.
So I've had to chase sometimes, hence why the loss.
Yeah.
As a kind of general issue.
No, it's an interesting point. We definitely can't do it on our team, but we'd have to think about how we did that so it wasn't creating an industry.
Yeah.
I suppose I just wanted to give you some assurance that we are making sure that Karen or representatives from the team come to each DMT to talk about the outstanding, not just stage 1 complaints, but also members' inquiries and FOIs to try and encourage people to respond, because it doesn't look very good for you or for us actual service users if we're not actually dealing with them. So we're trying to ensure that there is more regular correspondence and actually between us.
Thank you.
Possibly actually leading on from that, or Karen perhaps you tell me. In actual fact, it's not just environment regen, it's corporate services have had a massive increase in complaints, 33%. What sort of things are people complaining or commenting on that?
We get quite a lot to do with council tax and bailiff action, which is people don't like the bailiffs turning up to enforce something.
But I suppose we're facing a challenge with the DWP changing automatically as people earn monies, which then recalculates their benefits. So we then get letters saying, why have you recalculated my benefits? So there's quite a few, an increase in those, as well as just people generally maybe unhappy with the service they're receiving around council tax benefits or benefits.
Similar to Omar's question, but I sort of can guess what the answer might be based on the answer. I take it in that case you also don't know if a inquiry that's come through a resident that then they're following up with a member about that, then the member raises, and in effect you haven't the same issue raised twice. You wouldn't necessarily know that was happening either.
No, and I don't see how we could address that.
Yeah, it's probably the same.
Yeah.
Individual cases.
I mean, we currently don't even have the capacity to log if somebody's chasing up their own complaint. You know, we will then just say, look, we're dealing with it. And we do have programmed days of when we chase certain things. So, and that's just sort of built into our system, but going back to like the resident contacting you, etc.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time, probably similar experiences for others that you either a resident is following up and not having a response or isn't happy with the response that they've got for whatever reason. And then we are sort of following up again, and we're just adding to the caseload because you're two different people doing two different cases at different times.
I'd say just certainly some of the MP inquiries that come through, we do have a few that are like that. And so it's only if it's gone to the same person that we may pick it up that way. So certainly the way I've been copied into ones when sort of trying to follow it up, it's because they have complained, not been happy with their response, and come back via the MP. So that's how we try and then work with them to see that. But the system itself won't necessarily show that at this stage.
I suspect we've all, as councillors, had situations where we raise an issue and find that our colleagues have raised the same issue, and all three ward members are, and a member of our community that is contacting us omits to tell us that they've already spoken to X, Y, or Z, and that can be a bit frustrating. I think I sense that that's something that happens to others too. I don't think there's any way around that either.
Well, we're seeing an increasing number of complaints, members' inquiries, FOIs, where people are just scattergunning with who they send them to anyway. So we actually know that they've gone to all three of their ward members because they're copied in with about 17 other people. But if they're doing it just individually, yeah, we couldn't pick that up. But going back to the point about where we had such an increase last year and had a backlog, that just, it perpetuates the delays. So where we're getting back on top of things and performance is improving, hopefully we should see significant improvement and you shouldn't have to chase as much. That's my plea.
Just kind of
Yeah.
going back to what Peter said with where residents were emailing in all three councillors but potentially BCCing them all. So they're all kind of emailing in with members' inquiries. Is there any way that when members' inquiries picks up that those other councillors can be CC'd in, so if they haven't already kind of chased it up, they would then know that it's kind of already been dealt with?
If we know that they've been CC'd in, we would do, but if it's BCC'd in,
You can't,
you
is that?
can't tell, so...
Yeah, but there's no way to kind of add in the other ward councillors in at all. So as an example, like if I sent an email to members' inquiry and then Adam and Stephen, my colleagues, is there any way that on your response?
That's it. We've
Or is
had
that-
some
yeah.
issue previously if there are split
Oh,
ones.
okay.
So we may not be
okay,
able to,
yeah.
so that was part of the issue when we had the CRM.
Yeah, okay.
They just didn't necessarily.
Maybe
want
just
that.
mine will do.
Yeah, have a word with your
Yeah, yeah. You always see, yeah, he doesn't know me.
Are there any other questions? Well, this.
Sorry. On a happier note, with the compliments, is there any sort of, apart from obviously where it is an individual who is being complimented that they know that has happened, is there any sort of recognition or kind of reward system in place that means they get something other than just a nice email like that?
At the moment, it's emails get sent through to us for us to log. If they come directly into our team to the complaints inbox, we will then email the person and their manager so their manager's aware, and we are trying to promote people, if they're getting the compliments sent to them directly, to send them through to us, because obviously we can only deal with what we've got, and we have seen a significant increase because we sent an email around to all managers. But it's not linked to anything other than just the general well-being, knowing that you're loved by your service users. Yeah.
So some members of the public, you'll see on the gifts and hospitality, the officers do give something extra. And if we are aware of some staff who have gone over and above, then we have the Staff Excellence Awards, so they may be nominated as part of that process as well, and then so could actually then get something further as a result of that.
Any more? Okay, well, this report is just information. Thank you, Karen, for presenting and answering our questions.
Thank you, Chair.
Review of funding and policies.
So this is the review of polling places and polling districts. This review takes place, has to legally take place every 5 years, where we are legally required to review all polling districts and polling places in the borough to ensure that all electors have reasonable facilities for voting and have regards to the needs of electors disabled as well in that review. So we started off this review this summer and we did an online consultation from mid-July to mid-September, mid-December, sorry, that asked residents to comment on the existing arrangements. Certain issues that are specific to this review other than others, with regards to others, are the use of schools as polling places. So the returning officer does recognise that using schools as polling places does cause disruption to parents and pupils, so we have attempted where possible to find alternative venues to schools that are required to close. The other specific issue of this review is the impact of the 2019-2020 ward boundary review that's being conducted by the Local Government Boundary Commission. So they are currently undertaking a review of all the ward boundaries and ward names in Merton. This, when it's published, may well necessitate extensive changes to polling districts and polling places. So Merton Council are going to undertake another full review once, or before, sorry, the enforcements from the Government Boundary Commission come into force, ready for the May 2022 election. So there's going to be another review before before March 2022. Therefore, we've deferred changes to actual polling district boundaries until this next review because we think it could cause unnecessary confusion to electors. And the final issue affecting this review is the general election, which has just been called. Now, this review should have been discussing the changes to polling places ready for the GLA elections in 2020. But now that we have a snap general election, I've got to inform you that the changes, because this report has been approved by the Deputy Leader already, what we've had to do is immediately send off poll card data to printers. So the changes that have been actioned in this report, we are intending to go with for the general election because it's had that provisional approval, because we couldn't wait until after this meeting, because then you've got the risk that your poll cards are going to go out very, very late, just before the election. If anything was going to be reversed, then it would run the risk of poll cards going out very, very late for that polling district. So, on that note, Chair, would you like me to run through all the changes that we've made and why, or would you rather not I just take questions on any specific changes?
I think given the length of the agenda and the volume of business that we've got to get through, it would be sensible to ask members if they have specific questions. Caroline wants to...
Andrew has made a commitment that after the election we will review the changes, and if there were any issues to bring that back in a further update for you, because we realise we haven't necessarily had the opportunity to discuss and for you to formally sign off because of the timings. But if there are any issues with the new places, we will let you know, and Andrew said he would come back and report that to you.
Can I just get a bit of clarity around where there are changes to polling stations, in particular where a good number of them are ceasing the use of schools and using Sarah Hall close by. But I can only talk of one that I know and I picked up on, which is in Cannon Hill, which I once upon a time represented. And that is, so ceasing to use Hillcross, we go to use the Central Ward Residents Association, which is, you could be sort of forgiven for not knowing it's there, because it really looks like the access way to garages around the back of houses. And unless you know where the Central Club is, and obviously people in Ashridge Way would, but there will be a number of others who have no clue where it is. So, and I know what happened in Hillside. There are no changes in Hillside, but when the community centre in St George's Road was closed, and we changed to Drake House, also in St George's Road, and only about 100 yards down the road. A large number of people, I don't mean thousands, but there were a good many people went to the wrong place, lost their tempers and went home. We don't really want that to happen at the general election, do we? So, in particular, then, if I can continue to talk about the Central Ward residents, there is mention in there that there will be additional lighting. That additional lighting needs to be from the curbside, so that it's very obvious. This is where the polling station is, because people who are familiar with Hillcross would enter the school from Ashridge Way and Monkley. We think in Monkley, see the school's closed, but know where St Ward is.
Yeah, I take your point, and it's a very good point about people just expecting their polling station is going to be their usual polling station, where it was in both the schools. what we do have is we have a map of poll cards, and we have a message on the poll card saying that your polling station has changed. But what we will also do is we put notices up on the previous polling stations, and your polling station has changed to this location with the address on it, because of the time of year. We're going to look at getting fluorescent signs on those premises as well. During the day, it shouldn't be so bad because the schools will be still open, so we can also let them know to direct people. If they do get to the gate, and ring the buzzer. But yeah, it'll mainly be signs up to redirect people. I mean, it's a difficult situation because the kind of public opinion, especially with the Central Ward Residents Club and Hillcross Primary School, we have a lot of complaints after using Hillcross Primary School in the European elections and then having to use it again at short notice for the by-election in Cannon Hill. So that's made that change. Some of the other schools we haven't had too many complaints about really, but we're kind of the policy shift is now going towards, which has been a bit in the media about it in the last few days. I think that was trying to move away from the schools. So if we can try and push people out of the schools to go to a different hall, and we can make that hall accessible, then I think it's something that we should endeavour to do, because it seems to be that people are getting, with more working parents now and everything like that, people are getting more frustrated when we do use school. And also, elections used to be less frequent than they seem to be at the moment. This is very, a major poll every year, or even 2 a year this year. So we're hoping with that inconvenience, hopefully you're mitigating that by using the halls instead of the school. Unfortunately, we're still closing 4 schools, but that's an improvement from 12 at the European elections. So we're hoping that residents will understand to a certain extent if their polling station has changed, because we're not having to close the local school. But yeah, we will make every effort to put enough adequate signage up to direct them and adequate lighting, etc.
Can I just make a final comment?
Just a very
A brief one, yes. Well, and I'm not having a pop at Mark Allison because I probably enjoy doing that anyway. But I have to say, bearing in mind this general election is going to be in the middle of the winter and it's dark at 4 o'clock, this was not the right time to change polling stations. It would have been much better to have left it until the GLA mayoral election next year, when at least people would have another 3 or 4 hours worth of light and not feel concerned about walking the extra 200 or 300 yards. I think it was a wrong decision.
Am I right in saying that these are all recommendations made by yourself?
And the legislative team,
rather than an elected member of the authority?
Well, it's the acting returning officer basically that is responsible for polling places, but then the council has to approve. So this report was sent to the elected member, deputy leader to approve.
No, but the recommendations were made by
recommendations
not an elected member. That's and ward council.
All councils have been consulted on every change, and if any of them have concerns about it, then we wouldn't have done it.
It's not the change, it's the timing of the change.
But the paper was already scheduled to come here before the election was called, so therefore we didn't have the time, and because of the issue with so many schools, the fact that we didn't say we're going to change the schools, we then said, no, we're not for this, but we will do, that was then the dilemma we were in, so that's why the decision was made to go with these.
Heading for a great deal of criticism.
Sorry, can I just...
I've seen everything first and I'll come to you, Joe.
Thanks, Peter. Sorry, I was just going to agree with David about the place actually, because I've driven past it on 3 occasions when I've had to go for function there, because you really don't know it's there. But if you're going to put signs on the school, it's just opposite the school, just a little bit, so I think it'll be easy. You have to put big signs so people can actually see. It is difficult to actually find, but if you put enough signs there, big enough for people to find, especially from the beginning of the road, they may be there. It'll be easier.
I just want to say thank you very much for the work you've done, because I know a lot of parents. I know a lot of parents are going to be very grateful come the election, and they'll be able to not to have their children off to school. So thank you.
Right. I notice you have chosen the Church of the Assumption at 22 Leeds Road. It's my church, you know. Is it the church, the hall you're going to use? I take it, the hall.
Yes.
I thought it was too small for. Oh, it's small, too small for that, you know. It's the right size.
I think that that hall in particular, it's not the biggest hall, but it is, I think, with the polling booths together, how we set them up, you can back them onto each other. So you can have half of the hall as one polling station, and you have the other half of the hall as the other polling station. So we think it can be managed with, you know, minimal fuss really, that one. And it is a little bit further down the road than the primary school, but again, we're going to have to make sure we have the adequate signage.
I'm sure John subscribes to the view that God works in a mysterious way. And I have to say that I was very amused by the Now show when a little boy said, you know, you can't vote here, you'll have to use the stables, and you can put your votes in the manger. And somebody said many schools don't have stables. And the West, that sounded remarkably like Boris said, well, where do they put their polo ponies? Any other questions? Stan?
Yes, these new changes, you have checked them over that they've all got disability access.
Yes, they've all got disabled access. The St John the Divine Hall has got a lift over the doorway, so they're going to have to put a ramp up at that one, but otherwise then they do, yes.
Okay, so
I mean, this is a done deal for the general election, certainly. There will be an opportunity to feedback, and members have made comments I think Andrew will find helpful and where possible act upon, and we'll just have to do our best in the dark, in the bleak midwinter. But we wish you well, and your staff, and all those officers that are participating in this endeavour. The best of luck, and hope that it doesn't snow.
thank you very much.
You have a good supply of shovels, should that be necessary.
You're taking the fifth. Okay. Thank you. So, we're now going to do development enforcement update, and that's John. And then we're going to do agenda item 17.
Thank you, Chair. Within this report, I've tried to outline the issues that we currently face within the areas of environmental enforcement and program.
I'm very sorry to interrupt. Could you use the microphone?
My apologies. And looking at fly tipping in particular. It's important to note that we've done a lot of recent work within the scrutiny panel and working with the cabinet member in developing a draft fly tipping strategy that we're currently working with members and have been running workshops to populate ideas on how we can best tackle fly tipping across all wards through a series of workshops. And that will culminate in a fly tipping action plan that will stimulate the activity that my enforcement team does in tackling fly tipping. Fly tipping nationally has been on the increase over several years as well as locally. There are some important factors that we need to consider in terms of both the ease of access of modern reporting of issues has played itself into the increase in the numbers of reports reported to councils across the country, as well as some of the difficulties that we have as an enforcement team in securing what we would call traditional information that is left with waste, such as address details from houses. The Postal Service has self-address labeled post has decreased year on year since 2013, around 22% decrease in address posts, as well as people's awareness of information theft. People are very aware of removing personal information from waste, especially from deposited waste. We have had some success both regionally and locally in terms of fly tipping, and my team is predicated on utilizing fixed penalty notes for fly tipping and littering offenses as the first option rather than moving to more formal prosecutions. And what I would note in figure 3 under 2.10 and figure 4 is Merton's success in terms of environmental enforcement total actions, but then in figure 4 the use of fixed penalty notes, whereas within London we have a significant number of fixed penalty notes that are issued against environmental crimes, and that allows us to ensure that offenders are held to account for their crimes. The last thing is an update not within this report to demonstrate some of the current activity that we're doing. We have a site within the borough that is currently under operation, and to date we have witnessed 46 vehicles depositing fly tipping, and of those we've had 5 vehicles have had multiple occurrences. We've to date issued 12 400-pound fixed penalty notices for offenders at this location. We also have one local company that we have witnessed the deposit of hazardous waste and they are coming in to be interviewed under caution. And in those cases, those are the ones that we set up for a more formal prosecution, as the weight of the event, what they're doing is so significant. Thank you.
Well, this is an issue that certainly exercises the minds of members of this committee, but I think it also reflects the views of the entire council. John, I saw you first because I knew you would ask.
Yeah, we in Belgrade, we had a ward tour on Monday. We picked up 38 fly tips. Now, when you prosecute or give a fine for fly tipping, do you publicize it? Because people want to know what we're doing, and they don't think we're doing anything about it. So unless you publicize, the penalties or whatever, so people can know, yes, I did something, we will always be complaining.
Thank you very much. Chair, we do have a location on the website to publicize offenders. Regrettably, the information currently at this minute is out of date, and we need to refresh that data to be accurate. What we can do in terms of fixed penalty notices is only demonstrate the number of total fixed penalty notices that we have issued, because when somebody pays a fixed penalty notice, they are discharging their liability for that prosecution. So we can't formally name and shame that person because they have chosen to pay the fixed penalty notice rather than to be formally prosecuted. The ones that we can and do name are the individual cases where we have more formal prosecutions that go through the court system, and we do press releases and name and shame those individuals.
Can I just follow up on that, if I may? So, let's say in John's ward, there are an excessive number. I don't know how it compares with other wards, but is it not possible to actually inform people of the number of fixed penalties, not the names and addresses of people who paid them, but the number of fixed penalties issued in that ward in the last quarter, and could we not kind of, design a little sign that would hang on, say, street signs or lampposts that could actually say, in this area we have issued 40 fixed penalty notices in the last 3 months? Because it seems to me that would be and how much are these, what's the value of the fixed penalty?
It would depend on the activity. If it was from £150 for littering offences to £400 for FPNs for flag tipping. So it would depend on the offence. But we could do something similar to that information. We produce an internal chart which has the ward by ward basis of what FPNs have been issued in what ward, and that's something that we could turn into an infograph that could be on the website. It would be quite costly and time consuming to physically put signage within each of the wards and then constantly update that signage, and there's also the risk of that signage damage being caused to that signage. So that's a significant investment, and but we could publicize that information in that.
I was suggesting that perhaps if it was up high enough, people could put grease on the lamppost.
So it's just to let you know there will be an article in my Merton coming out around cleaning up our streets, so showing the work that we're doing with regards to resident fly tipping, what we call chain reaction fly tipping, when someone leaves something and then other people do something there, and fly tipping officers investigating and how much it actually costs us, the work that we do with the police to seize vehicles as well. So hopefully that is the start of a more up-to-date issue following on from the changes that we made to the website as well.
What we can bold print cover the paper so people can pick them straight away. It's not a small 2 lines. There is a corner.
It's more than half the page.
Put them in place straight away. Put it up.
Thanks, Jim. We've had some really strange little signs stuck up saying we're watching you, when in fact we're not watching anybody, because that doesn't watch anyone, and people go along and just deface it or tear it up. My ward, which is Northampton, borders Croydon, so I saw a sign somewhere where lots of people put their bags at bus stop, and they've come up with a really, really good sign that I took a picture of, and it tells you how much you'll be fined, and long story, but it is a beautiful sign. And I gave it to an officer, and I said, from Viola, and I said, why can't we use this? And he said to me, this is a meeting we had, he said, oh, I'm aware of it, because we work with Croydon, and we've been looking into it. How far have we done that? Because it's very effective. It's not something that you could just put a sign on or cross it, and if you were to write on it, it can be wiped off. And it tells you about the court system, the whole story, in just about an A4. They're a little bit bigger, but you can read it. And I really think we need something effective. Those little pieces of paper just look like more rubbish, really, being scattered. And people go along and they do tear them, leave pieces of it along the way. So what are we doing, please?
Chair, we are investing in some innovative work with the Keep Britain Tidy group, which stimulates some of those ideas. We have adopted more of a CSI or crime scene approach where we are going to work within specified flag tipping incidents and make them look like a crime scene, and then have, using our always-on communication strategy, we will be communicating that using social media outlets to basically follow that through from all the time, from the point of reporting it, there'd be our enforcement team there to Veolia collecting it. Veolia don't really get directly involved within the enforcement of that, so if you did pass that information to Veolia, I don't think I would have a way of getting that. But please pass it to me, and there are also other innovative ways where people have been putting price tags on flag tipping to show members of the public as they walk past what the cost of that is, and also what that money could have been used for in other ways in the local authority, such as providing adult care or children's educational needs. So what does that equate to? And so people can learn about, you know, the cost of flag tipping, but where that could also be, those resources could be used elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to the table on 2.18, where we have the financial year to date, do we know whether the figure for the FPNs, what the comparative is in comparison to last year, where that figure is full 12 months? Is that higher or lower?
Thank you. At the time of writing the report, it was lower, but with the current activity that I just spoke about, it will accelerate that, so we will be over target in terms of that.
Okay.
This is within our bespoke in-house team.
Yeah.
We have some added value through the use of our environmental service provider, Kingdom, who produced the very large numbers of FPNs that you see within this report, based on a lot of littering offenses. We've been recently using them for dog fouling offenses, and also special activities we engage with our the other people who are using our sites, and we encourage them to fund having Kingdom there to help keep the area clean during those activities.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the flag tipping seems to be mattresses and stuff like that people, they change them and they just decide to throw it out on the green. Do we advertise enough to let people know about, you know, that these items will be picked up from inside your own gate? If we report to the council, you know, you agree to pick up 2 or 3 items.
Yes, but the cost is very fast.
There's a charge now, that's probably why we're seeing more of it there, because at one time they picked up for free.
I would note that may be an initial reaction from the stimulus of a change of the service. However, there is significant national data, long-term national data, to demonstrate that the charging for bulky waste household items doesn't encourage to a significant degree just flag tipping. Flag tippers are typically criminals or people who, it is a criminal offense. So somebody just walking, thinking it is socially acceptable to throw their waste on a common bit of land or green is committing a criminal offense, and it is not, I don't think, a direct relationship to the charging of household waste releases them or expunges them of that responsibility.
And one other thing is, I reported it was obvious where the flight tip had come from. There was somebody refurbishing their house, and it was quite local. But I'm just wondering, and obviously I don't have the details with me now, but would you, when this sort of thing is reported, would you go to that house and sort of speak with the people concerned?
That is a perfect example of the type of events that we would investigate and prosecute. We wouldn't discharge their responsibility through a fixed penalty note. If we found a linkage between something currently happening as an activity and then the deposit of waste, we would choose to prosecute that more formally, and it's also a trade activity, a commercial activity for higher reward. So that is more significant to us. We are going to be looking at developing information hotline, better reporting for fly tipping, and possibly enviro crime award scheme where people can leave information, and if successful, if it allows us to successfully prosecute that, we would be able to partake in an award for their participation in that, to hopefully stimulate people to give us more information.
Thank you. Yes, sorry, just coming back to the sort of household furniture that's been left behind. Unfortunately, it's not within these papers, but I think we all got something about the follow-up to the waste strategy and things over the next sort of week or so. In the papers on that, it suggests that 80% of the fly tips are things like end of tenancy mattresses, things. Right. So, but you're concentrating on big fly tips when in actual fact 80% is people end of tenancy, for example, saying, do you know what, I'm moving out of my house. I don't care, I'm going to dump my mattress. Okay, so for example, at the meeting last year, I suggested to Councillor Brent at the time, who was a cabinet for Regen, to write to all of the local estate agents who know when tenants are moving out. They get a month's notice. You could therefore give them a thing to show them how to get rid of their waste properly. How has that been followed up? How many agents have you contacted?
Thank you, John. In terms of responding to that, we are looking at developing some information for new residents and people through the council tax system who are changing their address into a new address, where we will then focus that information to go to that point, utilizing the information that we have. In terms of also prosecuting or focusing our resource for single item abandoned waste elements, it is very rare that we would be able to find identification information about that or spot the individual just depositing that information or that material. Therefore, a chance for successful prosecution is rare. So we need to prioritize our resource on areas where we can gain successful prosecutions, and what we will do is promote in general the unlawful behavior of depositing waste or abandoning waste outside when you move a location, because we have to use our resources wisely. We have a limited team and a limited resource. We maybe have between 1 in 25 incidents to, in some locations, 1 in 50 incidents will have any fruitful information where we may even be able to look at a low-level FPN, issuing a low-level FPN.
Sorry, I'm completely convinced by that. I'm confused that you're looking into putting price tags on rubbish left behind to inform the public of what it's costing services. That to me sounds really labour intensive, and I think the public's perception is going to be, so somebody went out and put a price tag on the rubbish but didn't take it away. I think that's going to bite you on the bum. I think the opportunity to go to every single estate agent in the borough and give them a free leaflet sounds much easier. You need to prevent. If you're talking about prevention, then that's a good way of educating people. If that's what we're aiming to do.
Clive Brothers. Councillor Wilkinson's point. Of course, when tenants leave, they, at the beginning of the tenancy, speaking as a lawyer, they would have paid the rent deposit. So perhaps the advice to agents is to their clients, the landlords, that they should not part with the deposit until after the tenant has departed and they have seen evidence that there has been no rubbish left. And obviously, therefore, they should deduct, make a deduction from the rent deposit if the rubbish is there. And so maybe the advice to agents, supposedly, should be to the effect, please ensure that rent deposits are not paid back till after the tenant is gone and it's clear that they have not deposited rubbish, left rubbish. Thank you.
Do you understand?
John, can you put your mic on? I was wondering that was legal, even though you're a lawyer, because you're asking the agent to hold back or deduct money from the deposit, all because they haven't changed the rubbish or they don't get the deposit.
Yes, a lot of landlords, some landlords will be local and some will not be local. Some will be investors who live some way away, exactly. But what I think we're suggesting, I'm suggesting, is that you can put although the rent deposit is not, there's no duty to vis-a-vis the agent what to do with the rent deposit. That's entirely a matter for the landlord whether or not to withhold any of it. The agent could nevertheless play a role in informing the landlord, suggesting first of all the rent deposit should be held on to until after the tenant is departed and we know what the tenant has done. And secondly, thereafter, to ensure that appropriate advice is given to the advice means information is passed to the landlord. Yes, there has been rubbish left, or there's not been rubbish left, and you can safely, appropriately pay the rent deposit back or not.
Sorry,
Can I just say that my understanding of the deposit related to the inside of the premises and actually proving, even if the rubbish was in the vicinity of a particular property, proving that it was the former tenant there, I think would present our officers with some challenges, and indeed our landlord to challenge the, if the premises are left in a poor state, then there would have been an inspection before they went in, there would have been photographs and so on they can compare them to, and they can legitimately and legally withhold the deposit. I'm not convinced that that would apply outside on the street, which is why we're talking about here, but I bow to my learned friend.
Well, of course, I'm ready to be corrected if necessary. I think it may be an evidential point. You're right, I'm trying to give a bit more. My suggestion may or may not always prove workable in due course, or in the event. I'm suggesting it's a way of putting some pressure onto the agents. Merton, the council could put some pressure onto local agents in a way that may have some effect. I take your point, Mr. Chairman, that a matter of evidence on each occasion whether you can connect the dumping of rubbish with individual tenant. But I suspect in most cases it will be possible. Maybe then where the advice is for the agents to be taking a more active role when they check out. I agree this is subject to a more detailed discussion possibly, but I'm happy to discuss it with whoever may be appropriate to think it through and see if anything can be done on that. Thank you.
Can I just go back and say, sometimes it's probably the landlord themselves, so sort of leaving the mess. So where we are, we know it's a landlord that does a lot of the clearing out when tenants have gone. So that means you really have to go after the landlord, basically, rather than the tenant.
I wasn't addressing that point, I'm afraid. I was addressing whether the tenant leaves it.
Start somewhere.
It does seem to me that picking up on Councillor Wilkinson's point, one would hope that an approach could be made at low cost to local agents who will be writing to tenants at the end of their tenancy to remind them of the terms of what day they have to get out and what state they need to leave. And even if we were able to persuade them to insert a line or two saying that dumping stuff in the street is a criminal offence and that Merton in the last few months has issued X fixed penalty notices, coming back to my earlier point, in this particular area, that might in itself act as a deterrent. It wouldn't cost the agents anything. It would perhaps generate the goodwill of the community because they would be seen to be being socially responsible and playing their part in a problem that really does plague all of us. So I think there may be something in there. I would encourage officers to. I'm not wanting you to spend your scarce resources doing things that are going to be labour intensive and so on. But I would have thought that sending out a letter or inviting agents to come to a meeting to discuss how they could contribute to attempting to resolve this problem might actually lead to a positive response. I would hope so.
Very briefly, it would help if you could organise the road sweeping after the dustbin has been around rather than go before the dustbins. Sometimes they don't follow up, they don't follow on, you know what I mean? Just to say and sometimes they leave quite less.
This is just for clarification. I know OIP has got a large item disposal. You can phone up the council and that will be taken away for free. Yeah? OIP?
I don't believe there's a discount.
Huh?
I don't believe there's a discount.
Not for OIP.
No.
Okay.
Similar to the bottle top scheme, maybe we should put a value on the rubbish and it could be taken to the waste area and we were given some 50p a pound or £5 by weight. And we could do away with all of the problems of flighted people and people just discarding their rubbish. Just a thought.
They have to put a value on it, it's called council tax.
I have to say that whenever I take something to Garth Road, the queues are long enough without encouraging people to be sort of queuing up to get their money, free money. But, Omar.
Thank you, Chair. I kind of just wanted to second what Dickie and yourself kind of mentioned in regards to contacting estate agents. And I know resourcing and finance is an issue, so I don't know whether potentially emailing estate agents with a simple PDF that they could kind of either forward on or kind of pass over, which would save resources, finances, and would be as effective as going and handing in a leaflet to them. So I think we should kind of utilise the technology that we have to our advantage.
Thank you. We are planning to have a publication to go out to new residents in the borough through the council tax system. And likewise, I've noted this, and this is something we could emulate by taking the information that we're proposing to send out and craft it in a way that fits people who are moving out of tenant locations, and do that through the list of tenants, agents that we have across the borough. That's something that we can do.
Thank you, Definitely do it.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're all done with this one, so we're asked to review and comment. We have reviewed and commented. So thank you very much, John, for your presentation and your answers. So, we are now I'm proposing a and we've agreed to move on to item 17, which involves exclusion of the press and public. I need to read to you, we need to resolve that the public are excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following report on the grounds that it is exempt from disclosure for the reasons stated in the report. Item 10 on the agenda, which is risk management, and that's Caroline to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the regular item that we bring to you roughly this time of year, an update on our risk management strategy, a review of the risks, the strategic risks that we keep an eye on a regular basis. The strategy and the register will be going as part of the business plan update to Cabinet later on. So we welcome any comments on the risks that we've identified. You will see in paragraph 26 and page 135 the key ones, and the fact that we have one red risk scored at 24, which is around CSF funding and statutory services, and those who've already been to the first 3 rounds of scrutiny with some of the issues that we're having with our DSG and the impact that's having on our medium-term plan. We had one new risk stroke issue come onto the plan, which is the issues of the road bridge and how we deal with that going forward in the event of the repairs and the outcome of what needs to happen there. The South London Audit Partnership is also doing a review of risk across the 5 boroughs, and we'll be reporting back lessons learned from that. We do have occasional views from Civic, our insurance provider. They will have a look at our risk register, see the approach that we're taking. Are there things that they think we're missing from their knowledge of other boroughs? So we do try and keep it as up to date and real as possible. This goes to CFT on a quarterly basis, and I chair a quarterly meeting looking at all of our risks as well and issues, and we have a discussion as to what we think the key strategic ones are. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions? Agatha.
Bishopswood Road, do we know when it's likely to be open or the bridge to be done, or you know what's happening?
So there was an update to the scrutiny panel last week on that. I'm sure we are still awaiting the outcome of the investigation into the cause of the incident, and once we know that, and also what type of works need to be done to it.
That's more than 3 months or 4 months ago.
It's a very old bridge. It's quite technical, and there's lots of different agencies involved in what needs to be done about it. So the investigation is taking time, but we're sort of trying to work then as to what needs to happen to go forward. There's different monitoring that's gone on, so we've now got cameras underneath the bridge to look at the water flow to make sure, because we've had some very heavy rains recently, so we are constantly monitoring it to make sure that we, that hopefully nothing similar will happen again. Having regular meetings with businesses in the area to ensure how they are coping. We've granted some hardship relief to organisations in the vicinity as well. And there are regular meetings, and had some coffee rooms on the bridge to try and help the community come together. But yeah, so at the update, I wasn't there for that part of the meeting last week to see. I don't know what was actually said by the environment regeneration team. But work is underway. It's just that we are conscious that you're not seeing some of that visibly, but then there are leaflets going out to people in the local area. We've got the new bus provision being provided to help connect people at either sides of the bridge, and all the works that are done to light on the bridge, path from the bridge and cutting back all the bushes and that to make it feel safer, and putting cameras up to stop bikes coming over the bridge as well. So we're trying to do all that and then work behind the scenes to see still what needs to be done, but that bit is taking some time to come forward.
So you don't know roughly how long, because I'm guessing about a year.
I don't know, but as I said, the update to the scrutiny panel might have had last week, but we will also then get Environment James McGinley or Chris Lee to come back to you.
Sorry, can I just add, Agatha, just to help you out there? It's probably worth looking at, this was a big thing at Morton Community Forum a couple of weeks ago. I'll put it out there as it is public knowledge. I think they're expecting the engineers report mid-December into the new year. So realistically, until they get that, and it's going to be a long time yet, but Chris Withington did send out a really good update on Morton Community Forum, so it's probably worth having a look at that. Okay.
But I mean, this isn't a... I mean, I'll declare an interest because this is in my ward and it's something I've expressed very strong views about on behalf of local residents who sometimes say to me, you know, in the Second World War, bridges were destroyed and replaced within days in order to keep things going in London during the Blitz. Things, you know, there was a sense of emergency and it was solved. And frankly, I think local residents are tired of hearing that investigations are ongoing. They actually want to see action, and they want to be able to move around the borough so that they can go to work, take their children to school, go to their medical appointments and do all the things that people need to do as part of their everyday lives. No, I'll say no more than that, because if you start me off, who knows where I'll take us. But I do think it's important to recognise that this isn't a meeting to discuss the bridge, it's actually to discuss the risk management. This is one of a number identified at David.
Yes, thank you. I was going to rescue you from that and go back to the methodology. So, I mean, there's nothing visibly wrong with the paper. Indeed, it's to be welcomed. I have, though, I think in this meeting, but perhaps more with the auditors, raised a question around the methodology, which is just that one can become too comfortable with the mechanism that has been created. And I think or if I may, just repeat an example. When I was on the London Waste and Recycling Board, we changed our auditors. We refreshed the way in which we looked at risk. And one occasion needs to step back and look at the way in which you are assuming certain potential risk outcomes, and they might be repetitive, or there may be a different way of looking at them. So my question is this a methodology that has been in place for a while? Is it one that evolves? And in any case, do you sometimes try to step back and look and see whether this is the most effective way of doing this exercise?
So I would say it does evolve, and that's why I sort of certainly Zurich coming in and challenging us as to the way that we look at things does help. And if I can mention Brexit, just to sort of looking at the approach that we have to that has made us think about some of these risks around, okay, we can say it's a risk, but if it then comes to pass, so what? Is what we've put in place managing that or mitigating it? So it's helping us rethink things in a different way. And also that's what I'm hoping sort of the audit will look at as well, and some of that learning from the other boroughs and the approach that we have. So certainly we are very clear in challenging people around the control actions and making sure that we know what the risk is, and indeed we had a bit of a debate around the Bishop's Bridge. Come back to that one quickly. It's just, was it a risk or was it an issue? It clearly is a very live issue for people at the moment, not being able to go about the day-to-day, the fact that it's closed.
Risk before.
Well, we didn't necessarily see it as a risk before, but we also now see it as a risk as around, do we know what the outcome of the inspection report is going to be? What does that mean then for what needs to happen to the bridge? Does it need to be, can it be repaired? Does it need to be replaced? And therefore the arrangements we need to go through to be able to do that. And then the funding available to be able to go through to do that and who pays. So all those sorts of things, that's the example of what we would think about. And also some of the ones we have taken a few risks off our register where we say, okay, we think we're comfortable with that, but they have to be green for a period of time and we have to have an update. So we try and encourage the owners of the risk to make sure that they are owning them, keeping them live and keeping them with their control actions, they're meaningful, to give us the comfort that they are being either managed to the extent they can be. Not all risks can be fully mitigated. So again, it's what happens in those instances where sort of there's very little we can do in certain areas.
Thanks, Joe. So as somebody who uses the alternative route, because I can't use the one that I prefer because of the bridge, there are lots of vehicles near to that pub at the corner, at the top. And if you ever travel along there, especially with huge lorries coming from and nothing else can pass. Yes, nothing can pass as they're coming along. And then especially if it's collection day, and I'm just wondering if anybody has actually looked at the impact of the extra traffic on that road, because if anything happens, we have it.
I don't know, I'll take that back to Pecuniary and
They need to assess the extra situation that's going on there, and the traffic, which is eternal. It goes right back to the roundabout.
What road is that?
One near the tram stop.
David, you've actually addressed one of the recommendations in your remarks, and I'm anxious that we do focus on the task that we've been set. So are we of the view that the process is adequate? And then are there issues that we need to, and Janet, you would probably like to speak about?
Just on 2.8, tree cost departmental efforts continuing to resolve the issue. Audit of our tree management arrangements is currently underway. Can you expand on that and tell me when that might be finished?
Oh, I can answer that one. It's actually at draft stage and it was in my paper as well, so we've done a draft report. I don't report back to committee until the report's final. That's actually come out of the limited assurance at this stage, but I'll be coming back with the detail.
And do you have it today?
It's committee, it's March, yes, March.
Any other comments on the issues? Okay, so we've dealt with the two recommendations, and I think, given that the scale of the whole exercise, it's difficult for us to be absolutely certain that these things are being managed with place certain trust in those that are responsible for own risks and describing. So we can tend to leave it at that. Yes. Great, thank you. So, item 11 is the amendments to the Constitution of the
Thank you, Chair. This quite short report which is asking you to recommend to Council 2 amendments to the Constitution. The first one arose out of a complaint made to the Local Government Ombudsman from which we were recommending to clarify and strengthen the planning protocol. The amendment makes it clear that any members of planning committee wanting to do site inspections prior to the committee meeting should do those inspections from a public vantage point and not go onto the applicant's property, so as to avoid any perception of bias. So it's a clear recommendation from the Ombudsman. And the monitoring officer did write to all members of the planning committee to give them that advice in July this year. The second amendment is recommending an update to the policy framework in the Constitution, which the amendment is updating some of the titles of the policies and plans which are a bit outdated, and also adding to the list the Wimbledon Town Centre Master Plan as was agreed at a council meeting last November.
Any questions on those proposed amendments? Okay, can we agree to recommend to council? Item 12 is annual gifts and hospitality report, and that is also for members to begin with, and then officers and overflow.
So firstly, the report in relation to members. I'll just make an amendment, as I noticed there was an error on paragraph 2.5a. It shouldn't say city hospitality, it should say civic hospitality, which is quite different. It's the usual annual report for noting. Our review didn't raise any particular issues of concern. With what's been declared, as is normal practice, we would send out a reminder after this annual review just to remind members of their obligations under the code. So just available for questions if there are any.
I won't talk about Fulham Football Club again, because I thought you were going to have a word with Councillor Ambrose, but he's a season ticket holder, I think, anyway. But I did notice, and it's perhaps sort of worth us just being aware of, that Councillor Welton and Councillor Ambrose did go to this MIPIM conference in France with, I thought, at least one, if not two officers, and they record the councillors that they went to some dinners while they were there. Fine. But I don't think, I know we're not looking at it yet, but I don't think that in the officer report there are similar entries. And I'm not making a big deal out of it, I'm just saying there's an inconsistency there that needs to be acknowledged and actioned.
Yes, I'll have to check that they went, but yes.
Well, they might not have, they might have had to have a bottle of still water on the seafront.
I'll look into it.
They may have been looking in the window, longingly.
But it is a serious point, but I'm not trying to suggest anything at this meeting that was inappropriate. I'm just saying there's a lack of consistency.
I will look into it further.
Potentially.
Yeah, to investigate into the items. Okay. Any other questions on members?
When you say not out on the list,
Yeah,
by the way.
one England.
It's really got one against you.
I'm on the list.
I am a councillor.
Are you sure?
Ask Ken.
According to this list.
I'm trying to think of a joke about two bushes and a bird in the hand and all that. I can't get the public line fast enough.
I know which one's popular, so yeah.
So would you like to confess?
Oh, no, nothing. I didn't win Wimbledon tickets this year.
Okay. So we'll put that right as well. Yes. Fiona will give you a good talking to and extract the information. Okay, right, so now we move on to officers, and David's already made a connection between the two. So we're noting the report on members, and of course recommending members reminding the responsibility, and that's certainly something that justifies on a regular basis. So if we can give some hospitality to officers, anything to say there?
Not really, just that it's very low numbers, as has been on previous occasions. I think we're fairly satisfied that this is because there are very low numbers of gifts and hospitality being offered to officers. But again, we will do a reminder to all staff that of their obligations under our code of conduct.
When does that go out?
The reminder?
Yes.
Well, I don't know when Paul did it previously, but I will do it following this meeting. So.
But isn't it wise to remind them on the terms of the road? Yes. Okay, any questions or comments on this report? Okay, so we accept the recommendations, is that good? Thank you. Item 14 is Fiona again, and that's complaints against members.
There have been none since the last meeting.
Right, that's noted. Surprise?
Let's try hard.
Traditionally, we've had a very low number of complaints against members, so long may it continue. Item 15 is member training session update. That you?
I know there was training for the members of Audit Committee, but I now know that it sort of clashed on whether we're actually going to hold it at all in light of the election.
I'm trying to find out today, but I haven't had a response back from Sutton, because I thought with the elections it may have it might get moved. It was booked for the 27th of November, and Sutton are running a training session for people on audit committees and inviting all the partners to come, partner partners.
Right.
So it's going to cover internal audit, external audit, risk management and AGS, and it's just a role of, I'll let you know if that's...
Okay, that's unlikely to go ahead.
Yeah.
What's going on.
I'll let you know when the queue goes.
Thank you. Item 16 is the work programme. That is on pages 197 to 198. Is that noted? Item 17 we've already dealt with. Sorry. And item 18 hasn't dealt with. So and that brings us to the end of the meeting. But before we close, it's really important to note that this is Pam's last meeting as an independent person, and it would be remiss not to thank her for her contribution, which has been great and valued. I think we've really enjoyed having you on this committee, and we benefited from it. So you go with our thanks and best wishes, and I'm sure I speak for all the committee, but I'm sure they will agree to those sentiments. So, with that, we'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you for trying nicely. You have managed to get through an enormous amount of business in a relatively short period of time. Everyone take the opportunity to have their say and ask their questions, I hope. Thank you.